documents. So Betty Martini said that she had documents indicating that aspartame was supposedly developed by Nazi Germany, and it was developed as a biological weapon. I cannot verify that, unfortunately. If that document existed, it's long gone. So the story about aspartame is that it was accidentally discovered in 1965.
Okay. Well, the Nazis were definitely evil, but I mean, it's been consumed for so long by so many. I would assume if that were true, you would see the effects at this point, wouldn't you?
So
Don't you
there's
think?
a reason that this is episode 1. There's going to be more episodes. So this is just an introduction to mostly aspartame, but there's a reason why this is going to be episode 1, because we're going to be going into epidemiology and the incidence of all kinds of problems on future episodes. This episode is to lay the groundwork for, first of all, it's not safe. So today is all about establishing this is not safe. The research industries are bought and paid for. We have all the documents that show this, and it's going to be mostly about morbidity. We're not going to talk about mortality at all today, but
Okay.
But this is going to evolve. I don't know how many episodes this is going to be. Is it going to be 5 episodes?
It 10? Could be the aspartame series or the artificial sweetener series.
Yeah, it's going to be the Diet Zero Light series.
Diet Zero Light. He already made the title for it. That's right. Yeah, I forgot.
Yeah, so the title is going to be Diet Zero Light. And
you like that one, Chris?
Yeah.
So I mean, this book, Chris, this book.
I actually bought it.
So an internist like me, who died in 2013, he published this book in 2001. This guy, as of the time he published this book, he saw about 40,000 patients. 1,200 of those patients he identified as aspartame reactor. And when he got all of these people off of aspartame, 2/3 of them experienced near complete resolution or complete resolution of their complaints.
So,
yeah.
So I'm curious, what were their complaints? I mean, I know they were probably all varied, but is there a theme?
Everything's here. Everything's here. So, most of them were females, but it was about 70-30 for females. So, decreased vision, eye pain, decreased tears, blindness. One person had permanent blindness, tinnitus, noise intolerance, impairment of hearing, headaches. Headaches is number 1. It's 43%. And in the FDA's data, there's a similar predominance of headaches. Dizziness, confusion, drowsiness, paresthesias, convulsions, seizures, non-classified seizures, slurred speech, hyperactivity, restless legs, facial pain, psychological issues, okay, chest symptoms, tachycardia, dyspnea, shortness of breath.
What and did you say tinnitus or
yes? Tinnitus, tinnitus. I mean, I think I don't know the right way to say it. So there's like skin. There's a lot of skin stuff about 7% skin and weight gain. So there's a lot of weight gain. There's joint pains. Actually severe joint pain, 14%. Aggravated hypoglycemia. There's the one case of a young lady whose IQ dropped 20 points after she started drinking diet soda all the time. She was an honor student. She started drinking diet soda because she was studying a lot and she wanted to just.
This cover.
I
mean, show them this cover.
Yeah.
Really cool, man. It has all the complaints around the circle, and look what it says right here. FDA approved.
Yeah. Well, we know how that works, especially with recent data. But, again, so for the audience, I'm type 1 diabetic, so I didn't have a lot of options.
Hey, this is perfect. This pre-recording's going to be for Chris and Dan shows. Perfect.
So I consumed a lot of aspartame in my early years. I eventually saw a doctor that said, listen, you take insulin, you can eat whatever you want. You don't have to consume that stuff.
Well, you're that's different.
Exactly.
Different, but it's still aspartame toxicity. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was always my biggest concern, because even early on when I started consuming aspartame in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, that was already a complaint that it caused loss of memory and a lowering of IQ,
Yes.
even at that time. So
Yeah, I mean, this study that reviewed the safety, there's a nice graphic right here that basically glutamate, the glutamate receptor on NMDA receptors, right on that calcium channel. I mean, it's just a calcium channel, right? It binds and it depolarizes neurons. So basically it kills neurons. So aspartame agonizes the glutamate receptor. So it actually hits the same receptor that MSG hits. And
really,
it
that's
kills
interesting.
neurons. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
does the body overall recover if you quit, or is there
well that goes
permanent
back
damage?
well that goes back to Dr. H.J. Roberts' cohort. See this book is the biggest cohort with the most detail that's ever been studied. And about 2/3 of his patients had complete or near complete recovery of their symptoms upon cessation for 2 weeks. It's got to be 2 weeks at least.
So so I don't know if you know the outcomes, but that one student that you were discussing that drank a lot of diet soda when she was studying,
yeah,
did her IQ
recover?
return to normal for her?
I don't think so. Well, I mean, I don't know if it said yet, like yes or no. Let's see here. All he said was gratifying clinical and academic improvement ensued. So yes, she did.
Okay.
Yeah. So she did.
Interesting.
So she was an honor student. She started failing. Her IQ went down. Then she stopped, and then she recovered her grades.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, and it's not a single.
It's good stuff. Trump drinks it.
He loves it.
He does.
Drinks it like I used to.
Yeah.
Dr. Joe.
Okay, guys. I'm tempted to use like buzzwords in here. Like, I'm not a biologist, and
What, we're not talking about women and men here. Come on.
I know, but I mean, we start talking about Trump. I mean, like, we got to make this about the topic. I mean, this is an ethical discussion. This is this is a moral, ethical, scientific discussion, and this is about how science has been hijacked.
That's why Dr. Joe dressed ready.
So this is a pre-recording, or is this going up?
This file is going on Chris and Dan's show.
Okay.
Just free talk.
Okay.
So we can say anything we want.
Okay. So
fuck Diet Coke.
Should people be apprehensive of the FDA? So what I'm hearing you say is that there's no way the FDA should be approved.
Oh man.
Oh yeah, we can't say that. I forgot.
Dude, that's why I have two. He's one of the reasons I have 2 strikes on my chest.
You might as well quote Joe Biden. I'm gonna finish the job.
When I brought you on as like that was my second strike. My first one was a gun.
Yeah, but I didn't say anything wrong. Neither of us said anything wrong.
No, you're asking a question.
To the YouTube gods, we did.
You're asking a question. Yeah.
Okay, let me rephrase the question.
Agencies are not to be trusted.
Let me rephrase the question. Let me rephrase the question so we can. But we're not discussing vaccines, so I don't think this really matters, Dan. But I could be wrong. So let me rephrase the question. So, do you think that there is an element? Crap, I don't know how to rephrase this without causing a problem.
Right.
So this has to go through approval, right? So there was testing at some point. There was clinical testing, I assume.
That's going to be in the intro. I'm going to be reading all this on the intro. I mean, okay. I can read it to you now.
No. I don't want you to have to repeat yourself. So I'm just going to assume the answer to that is yes.
Let's go. We're ready to go. We're ready to go.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Let me.
This will be your main camera right here. So if you need
the bottom one, right?
Okay. The bottom. And then I'll be here kind of just your talking head. So
Okay.
it'll be nice and tight and up close on you guys.
Right? Okay.
Don't worry about the top camera. That's more for
okay. All right, perfect. Here we go.
Whenever you guys are ready.
Hey, welcome back to the Dr. Joe Show. Look, this is our third episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
Third episode. It's going to be interesting. This is Dr. Joe. As you know, we got our co-producer Chris Sauber joining us remote.
Hello, everybody.
From what's the village in Lord of the Rings? That's where he's at. Forgot.
The Hobbit. The Hobbit.
The Hobbit, yeah.
Hobbiton? I don't know.
I forgot, man. It's been years, but this is an important video for everybody watching. More needs to be said about this. Dr. Joe, why don't you introduce it? This is personal for you.
Yeah, it's so I guess I should start with the why. Why is this an important topic? I'm just gonna start off with a personal story here. So in 8th grade, I was blessed with migraines. The first migraine I ever had, I didn't know what was going on. I was in physical education. We were playing dodgeball, and I was about to peg this kid. I was really good at dodgeball, and I couldn't see the kid, and then I got smacked with a ball, and then I had to sit down, and I'm like, what was this? And then I walked outside. I realized I couldn't see. My vision was obscured, and so I was getting kind of worried. And then I went to tech class. I remember it was Mr. Pemberton's class. And by the end of that class, I had the worst headache of my life. It was just this splitting, terrible headache. I was slumped over on a desk, and my best friend was there, and he's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I just need to lay here for a while." And so trying to make a long story short, my mom, and this video is in part dedicated to my mother, who inspires so much curiosity and has inspired so much curiosity. So thanks, Mom. Anyway, so my mom, she takes me to all these doctors. So she took me to a family doc, pediatrician, and then a neurologist. I think it was multiple doctors. They either said, I don't know why, and here, use this medication. And I'm this kid at the time, and Mom's like, I don't want to put you on meds. So she brought me home, and she said, let's be curious. Let's try and figure out, is there something setting these off? And I'm a teenager, and took about a little over 10 years, I'd say, before I started to figure out the triggers. And at the time, I loved Winter Fresh gum. It was one of my favorite gums. And it took me years to realize that was one of my triggers. One of the best tasting gums ever. But I stopped using that. My migraines got less. Then it was a whole bunch of different candy bars that I would eat from time to time that would set it off. Then I noticed it was certain drinks. And then I noticed it was other foods. It was certain cakes and pastries and processed foods. And then I decided in 7th grade, I guess, so before that, I had already decided I wanted to be a doctor. And so this migraine thing, it really made me want to pursue the medical field, and kind of led me to major in biochemistry. And it was the research just on the internet, because the internet was blowing up when I was in high school and college. I started to pick up on these articles about aspartame toxicity. And that's kind of how we get here today. We're going to be talking about aspartame for a large portion of this video. This tome I have in my hand right here was written by an internist, Dr. H.J. Roberts, the late Dr. H.J. Roberts. He sadly passed away in 2013. He published this book in 2001. So the content we're going to be talking about from this book, it's as of 2001. So just everybody keep that in mind. And I'm also sad to report that the world's champion of aspartame toxicity awareness, Dr. Betty Martini, passed away this year. So I wanted to dedicate this video to her and her memory and her family. So let's start with, did you know?
Wait, Chris, you had a question?
Did you have a question?
I do have a couple of questions if I can. So,
Sure.
Dr. Joe, you mentioned a number of food products which were causing you discomforts.
Yes.
or symptoms. Now, most of those I would believe are free of aspartame. So you're more discussing food allergies opposed to aspartame intake, or
well, so the things that I know trigger my migraines, aspartame is one of several.
okay.
And my migraines are part of how I identify food toxicity, because then I identify it in my patients, and then that allows me to take better care of my patients.
Got it. Okay.
So, but this is just about artificial sweeteners with an emphasis on aspartame. This is going to be very aspartame heavy, but we're going to get into some other ones as well. But we're gonna touch on relevant questions. Okay, this is from Dr. Roberts. Okay, did you know that at least 2/3 of the adult population currently consumes products containing aspartame, as do an estimated 40% of children, and this is in 2001. And did you know that FDA in-house scientists, consultants for the General Accounting Office, and a public board of inquiry urged this agency not to approve aspartame for human use? Did you know that the approving FDA commissioner ignored A, impressive evidence in animals indicating the induction of brain tumors by this neurotoxic chemical, aspartame, and B, an important law, which is called the Delaney Clause, aimed at preventing the approval for human consumption of any substance shown to cause experimental cancer? And did you know that the FDA continues to condone the sale of the chemical in thousands of products, despite numerous complaints volunteered by outraged consumers who suffered severe reactions, often with considerable personal and economic loss? And this includes pilots who developed seizures, drank their aspartame-containing beverage, went to a neurologist, stopped their aspartame, got off their seizure meds, but because they had seizures, they could never fly again, even though their seizures never came back. That's just one example, okay? Did you know that the FDA regards serious reactions, such as convulsions, also known as seizures, to products containing aspartame as only anecdotal idiosyncrasies, unquote, that do not have to be reported because of its generally recognized as safe, or GRAS classification? Did you know that most physicians remain ignorant of aspartame disease or adamantly refuse to accept its legitimacy? This reflects a virtual blackout of information for doctors and consumer groups about the adverse effects of aspartame, and apathy/resistance by professional organizations and publications receiving corporate largesse. Did you know that the successful public relations barrage aimed at promoting aspartame products includes much troubling disinformation, most notably its purported safety for pregnant women?
Wow.
I'm not a biologist, by the way. I'm not a biologist. I just want to say, okay. Did you know that the majority of flawed scientific studies being used to diffuse concern about the safety of aspartame products were funded by industry? The shortcomings variously pertain to the materials used, the amounts and methods of administration, the nature of control subjects, the duration of such studies, the contents of presumed placebos, and arbitrary interpretation of the results. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. Since 1981, when aspartame was approved, okay, all this stuff has been going on.
Okay,
this is why
can I interject?
Became Jurassic ready for war. If you guys seen the previous video,
yeah, and I have a question. So, body language from Dr. Joe is telling me he's not a fan of the FDA. I think anybody watching this is going to perceive that to a degree.
I'm just reporting on aspartame.
I understand.
That's all I'm saying. All I'm doing is I'm laying out some information for everybody to be aware of, because apparently most people are not even aware that this happened.
Well, I prefaced it that way because I wanted to ask you a question. Do you think there would be a better way of handling products in terms of approval for the general public than what the FDA is doing?
Well,
mean, you gave a lot of information there that says this product is horrible
this is
for
all a
the
matter
individual.
of, everything I said is a matter of public record, and it's all been confirmed. Everything's
Certainly
in this book. All the documents are in this book. I mean, or at least most of them are. So is there a better way? That's a tough question, okay? Because I mean, I believe in regulatory mechanisms in order to safely release products, you know, for consumer use. You know, I believe in a mechanism for that. I think the problem is the facts are the facts, and I'm just reporting the facts here. I want to move on.
Okay.
So in short, 1981 was when aspartame got approved. 1992 was when the patent on aspartame expired, and then other companies were allowed to produce it. But all these complaints came through. So there's this article. It's called Aspartame Review of Safety. Okay. And it's by the Regulatory Toxicology and Pharmacology journal or something from 2002. Aspartame Review of Safety, a person's name, medical and scientific affairs, the NutraSweet Company. And then the second name, research and development, the NutraSweet Company. Okay, so just so you know, this is a safety review. And the top two names on this are people who work for one of the biggest producers of aspartame. Okay. Now, interestingly enough, this kind of leads to a nice lit review by a Dr. Ralph Walton, who I've tried to contact. Thank you, Dr. Walton, for your work. So this is also a tribute to your work. Dr. Walton did a literature review, and by the looks of this, the last article is from 1998, and the first article looked at was 1970. So it was 18 years of research, and they looked at the funding source of the study and the outcome of the study. So in short, the study's got all these different columns. Okay, so, and I'm just gonna try and breeze through this pretty quick, but the short of it is all the companies that funded this are either the Searle Industry, the NutraSweet Industry, General Food Corp, Ajinomoto, which is in Japan. 100% of the studies that were funded by industries that make aspartame showed that it was safe. Okay. Now, of the studies that were not funded by the industries, 92% showed that it was not safe. Wow. And these are from institutions.
Can you give one example of one of those institutions?
Washington University, there's two from there. Nippon Dental University, Tokyo. The US FDA, Washington U again. Actually, that's three from Washington U. MIT, there's three from MIT here. ASU, there's another one from MIT, NIH, UCLA, okay. University of Florida, MIT,
so academia, basically.
Mount Sinai. I mean, federal government. Look at that, federal government. Utah State. So Albert Einstein College of Medicine, Center for Brain Sciences. Okay. So the short of it is this. So this guy already did all the work. He did the work, and
did a good amount of work.
So this 93-page safety review from 2002, too long, didn't read. Okay. Moving on. Dr. Praetorius and Dr. Chowdhury. I have actually been in contact with both of these researchers. They published this study in 2017. It's a great review article on aspartame toxicity. Goes into the toxicity of aspartame on NMDA receptors, basically depolarizes your neurons.
Can you break down just really quick NMDA receptor?
Yeah, so NMDA receptors, there's a whole bunch of different receptors in your brain, and there's a lot of NMDA receptors on your neurons. And there's a glutamate receptor that is agonized, and this has been proven in a lab. It's agonized by the aspartame molecule. So this is part of the reason why MSG is toxic. MSG is neurotoxic because it causes a neuro-GI toxidrome. So it's MSG syndrome. People come in with neurological symptoms and vomiting, and the treatment is supportive. But aspartame also binds to that site, and it depolarizes neurons and kills neurons. Okay, so this is a great review article, and also Dr. Pretorius has given us permission to share the figures from this study. So we will be posting some of those figures,
and we're gonna try our best to get him on the show, right?
Yes, her. Yes.
Oh, her. Sorry.
Yes,
yeah.
She. So let's move on. So the general data of aspartame toxicity. So what do you guys think would be some of the organ systems that aspartame would affect? I mentioned brain, right? So a lot of brain.
Liver and kidneys.
Liver and kidneys, maybe? Okay.
Prostate.
I'm actually curious about that one.
Yeah, I am too. Actually, there might be some
anything that food or liquid flows through.
Yeah, so in this book, so this book chronicles 1,200 of Dr. Roberts' own patients that he deemed to have aspartame disease. Okay, and people might wonder, well, how do we know they had aspartame disease? Well, number one, because he identified it. Number two, because he got everybody off the aspartame. And 2/3 of these people either had complete resolution or near complete resolution of their symptoms upon stopping aspartame. Okay, so the gender, there is a predominance of females, so 72 to 28, so about 70-30 male to female ratio. Age range, most of the people referenced in this cohort were in their 20s to 50s, but there were people from infancy to 92. People were giving their infants aspartame. Okay.
Wow. How can you even do that?
Well, especially nowadays. I mean, maybe back in the day, maybe somebody told you it was safe, but there's no reason to let this stuff near a little child who can't even choose to drink it. So reasons for drinking. So this is important. Approximately half of the reactors used aspartame products because of being overweight, whether it was real or perceived, okay? Because some people have body dysmorphic disorder, right? Mm-hmm. Most patients with diabetes mellitus, with low blood sugar, hypoglycemia, consumed this to avoid sugar, right?
Right.
Yep, absolutely.
I remember when I was on keto, I was drinking this stuff, like Chris got me addicted to it. I was drinking this stuff like 6 a day for a while, like, hey, this is fine. This is keto.
Yeah.
And I did lose weight.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with the Diet Coke, but I lost weight.
That's true. That's a good point to remember for later. Now, there were other examples of why people were drinking this stuff. People were advised to drink this stuff because their dentists told them to. And then some people, it was part of a nutrition program for their job. So their job was making them drink it because they were made to think that this is okay. And there was a predominance of headaches, of course, in those people because they didn't really want to do that. But there was one case of a grand mal seizure that occurred in one of these people whose job told them to take it, and it was after their headaches had started. Okay. So the next section here is like, what are the complaints? We have major categories. We have eyes, ears, neurologic, psychologic, chest, heart, gastrointestinal, skin, weight, rheumatological and muscular, endocrine, fluid and urinary disturbances. Okay. So you mentioned the prostate, frequency of voiding. Burning on urination. So that's called dysuria, burning on urination. 11% of these 1,200 people complained of burning urination on aspartame. And then 2/3 of them got better upon cessation of aspartame, right? Intense thirst, bloating, fluid retention, kidney stones. Endocrine, aggravated hypoglycemia. We're going to talk about that later. Menstrual changes, severe reduction or cessation of periods, Graves' disease, problems with diabetes, problems with diabetic control, rheumatoid problems, fibromyalgia, myasthenia gravis. So there's a few cases in this book of diagnosed patients with myasthenia gravis. They were clinically diagnosed, and in some of them it reversed upon cessation. Okay. Skin reactions, all kinds of skin problems, nausea, diarrhea, vomiting.
Or the skin stuff like atopic.
The skin stuff, urticaria, severe itching with no rash, mouth and lip reactions, lupus-like reactions. Okay.
Well, a lot of these things you're mentioning, Dr. Joe, sound and are autoimmune disorders.
Yeah.
So maybe possibly aspartame. I have no idea. Speculating. Aspartame's autoimmune trigger.
So that's a wonderful idea. I don't think it's a matter of theory anymore. Okay. So let's here. I'm going to show this to you, Chris. This is the chemical structure of aspartame, and we're gonna post this one up. But you'll notice that aspartame is made up of an aspartate molecule, a phenylalanine molecule, and a methanol. Okay, and your proteases go snip snip and cut this molecule into phenylalanine, aspartic acid, and methanol. So what happens to methanol in your body when it's in your body? It turns into formaldehyde.
So, really?
Yeah, so it's an extremely reactive substance. And is it a mutagen? Yes. Will it irreversibly change proteins in your body and then turn your immune system against those autologous proteins and become autoimmune disease? Yes. It is completely possible. And it happens. But the cool thing is, again, for 2/3 of these people, you could stop it and then the symptoms would get better or vanish. Psychological problems, severe depression, worsening of depression, irritability, anxiety attacks, personality changes, insomnia. I just saw patients recently with insomnia that were consuming a lot of this stuff. Addiction to aspartame. So aspartame addiction is something that does not have an ICD-10 code, but it is very real. Every patient I've ever talked to that consumed an excessive amount of Diet Coke, they said it to me. They said I was addicted. I didn't even have to ask them.
Chris himself was.
Oh, yeah.
Chris, you say that you were addicted, and nobody said you were. You say you were, okay?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
yeah. Go ahead.
It's funny how aspartame works, because anybody who's drank it knows it takes about 2 weeks to where your taste buds accept it, right? It has a really bad taste or a funny aftertaste when you first start drinking it. But then once you are used to that flavor, it goes away. And actually anything that's not aspartame doesn't taste as good. I don't know if it's psychological addiction or if it's physical, but yeah, there's something there.
Now, Chris, let me ask you this. When you were drinking the diet soda, did you notice that you would be really hungry all the time, or did you have not much of an appetite?
I've always been fairly hungry in terms of...
Always?
Yeah.
So aspartame or not, you were always pretty hungry?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I can tell you the most probable reason for that is because you are type 1 and you do have to use insulin. So that intermittent insulin use, whatever your regimen is part of the reason why you are hungry.
Right.
But with type 2s, for the type 2s who are not on insulin, they notice, every single one of my patients notice, as soon as they get off of aspartame, they notice that this voracious hunger that they always have, which is the reason why type 2s can't stop eating, it gets cut down by a significant amount
when they start aspartame.
When they get off of aspartame,
when they get off,
yeah. So their voracious hunger goes away, and then it's a lot easier for them to adhere to the diet that I prescribe, which is individualized. Okay, so now we're coming back to this safety article that I'm completely blowing off. That's 93 pages. That has, I don't know how many authors are on this. Okay, there's a bunch of authors on it, but I'm blowing it off. Do you know why, Dan? because my clinical experience says that that's wrong. Because anybody can publish anything and
scientism
and pay enough money to have it published, in theory. But anyway, so clinical experience, that's kind of the whole point. So headaches. Now I want to emphasize something with aspartame. Headaches, 43% of Dr. Roberts' patients of the 1,200. This is the biggest percentage of any of the complaints is headaches. And then a close second was dizziness and confusion with memory loss. Okay, so neurological, but cardiac, does your heart have nerves in it? A lot of nerves in it, right? So this is cardiotoxic. Okay, so psych complaints 23% on depression, 16% on the perception of palpitations.
So I just want to add some anecdotal confirmation there. So Dan probably remembers this. About 10 years ago, and this is when I was consuming a ton of Diet Coke, at least a dozen cans a day, minimum. And Pepsi too, Diet Pepsi.
Wow.
I actually was sent by a cardiologist to have the gold standard, I forget what it's called, done to evaluate my heart, where they put a fluid in. I can't remember what it's called. Dr. Joe, I'm sure you know. Huh?
Angiogram?
And I don't think it was angiogram, but something similar, right? Where they send a tube up through your leg to your heart to look at the valves. They have to put a fluid. Is that an angiogram? Okay.
Yeah, and they put contrast and it can hurt your kidneys, and they talk about that.
Yeah.
Right.
So the doctor, because I was constantly having chest pain, constantly. I took good care of myself otherwise. I jogged and everything else. And the cardiologist said at the time I had a 25-year-old heart. This was a few years ago. He said, your heart's in excellent condition. I don't know what the cause is. So, I mean, again, anecdotal to what you're saying.
Anecdotal is important. I'm not a fan of aspartame. I think the evidence is pretty damning. But
yeah,
how do we different? A lot of those symptoms you read off are like caffeine, like too much caffeine to you.
Yeah, like caffeine withdrawal. It could be caffeine withdrawal.
So like the guy who did the study, right? Did he differentiate between the caffeine and the aspartame?
And a later part in the book, he talks about sort of co-addictions. You see worsened aspartame reactions when there's people that are drinking a lot of caffeine, or if there's
like the combo of the
if there's smokers, like
Diet Coke does have caffeine, nowhere near like in a cup of coffee, but even Chris and I had this conversation. You would need like a 12-pack to get the same kick from a regular cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of like palpitation, dizziness. I mean, I've had too much caffeine before, and I've had those symptoms too.
Of course, yeah. Palpitations or just sleep deprivation can cause palpitation. I mean, there's a laundry list of things. So a few little markers. So like I made some annotations in this book here. So just
a few
for the sake of this discussion. I mean, I am neglecting. I just want to show everybody I am neglecting a very large part of this book just for the sake of time, because this book is full of knowledge. But so phenylalanine and aspartic acid, in short, even in the 60s, our scientists knew that ocular cell lesions were detected in rats when they were given 7% phenylalanine. So phenylalanine is a breakdown product of aspartame. So you break this stuff down, and somebody's a type 2 diabetic, and then they end up going blind and neuropathy and all this stuff. And so what percentage
blamed on diabetes?
Yeah. So what percentage is attributed to diabetes? How much does diabetes get blamed for aspartame's problems? See, that's a question.
For retinopathy.
Yeah. So retinal metabolism and aspartame are opposites of each other. There is no retinal metabolism when there's aspartame. In short, okay. Destroys the mitochondria. This was a little reference to Sjogren's syndrome. Again, it's toxic to all the tissues. Headache and double-blind study. This is really fun. Shortcomings of double-blind studies. The reservations concerning double-blind studies involving the use of aspartame capsules or freshly prepared cold aspartame solutions are discussed in a later section of the book. For example, a double-blind study by Schiffman et al., 1987, concluded, quote, aspartame is no more likely to produce headache than placebo, okay? But The investigators did not replicate the reality of adding aspartame to hot water, tea, coffee, chocolate, or giving subjects the same incriminated products obtained from the market shelves. So now there's two other vexing issues involving presumed double-blind studies have been raised by other critics. One relates to the nature and amount of aspartame supplied. The other entails the possible inclusion of monosodium glutamate into the placebo administered. So if both the placebos cause headaches, okay, then we don't care what causes headaches. We just care that it's the same as placebo, even though a real placebo doesn't cause headaches, right? So anyway, moving on, obscure illnesses. I just wanted to touch on obscure illnesses. Pseudotumor cerebri. So for people who don't know what pseudotumor cerebri is, it's characterized by headache, convulsions, confusion, high CSF pressure, cerebral spinal fluid pressure, and a enlarged blind spot in the visual field. And to measure a cerebral spinal fluid, you got to lay the person down on their side, you got to stick a needle in their back and put this apparatus on them and watch the fluid go up, and where it stops, you measure the pressure. So they saw this in overweight young women and children. And then Behçet's disease, which is headache, neurologic findings, aseptic meningitis, oral and genital ulcers, joint pains, and uveitis, eye problems. Okay.
The eye problems are new to me. I never associated that with aspartame.
This marker is about ALS. There was somebody who ended up with ALS after they got on aspartame. That's a little harder to prove. It's a little bit more of a zebra, so we're not going to lean too heavily on that. Why did I put this one in here? There's so many carpal tunnel syndrome and IQ drop. Okay, this is
IQ drops.
So this is a great story, guys. If you buy this book, by the way, the only place I know where people can buy this book is on Amazon. If you search for it,
I picked it up.
Yeah, I mean, this book used to be really expensive. It's like only $60-$70 now. Anyway, probably going to go up after this podcast. But so 18-year-old college student. So she drank diet soda. They don't specify how much diet soda she drank, and some sort of aspartame containing additive to a drink. So she had aspartame at least 2 or 3 times a day or more. And then she also chewed several sticks of gum, which had aspartame in it. So this girl had multiple exposures, probably at least 5 or 6 exposures. She was a pianist. She was a typist. She was the director of an honors program at a major university. Oh, no, sorry. The director of an honors program congratulated her proficiency in an intro economics course. And she got inducted into the honors program. Then continued consumption of her aspartame, then her IQ drops 20 points. She gained weight. She had all these symptoms that we talked about in the beginning. She had several of those symptoms. And she had 2 CT scans of her head, an MRI of her head, an electroencephalogram of her head, which is like a seizure monitoring device. It suggested petit mal seizures. She was on medications for depression.
What's a petit mal?
It's a type of seizure that's usually diagnosed in children, I believe. Pediatrics. I'm not a pediatrician, but that's what it sounds like. But they tried giving her antidepressants, nothing worked. So then Dr. Roberts got a hold of this young lady in December of 1986. And the short of it is he got her off. Her grades improved and everything got better when she got off of aspartame. But there's a very, very cool clinical correlate here. They did a glucose tolerance test for her. So she came in fasting one day. Her fasting glucose was 115 standard units, and her insulin was 6.6 standard units, microunits per mil. So 6, if it's the same units we have, that's normal, okay? That's a normal fasting insulin. At the half-hour mark of the oral glucose challenge, it was 230 of a glucose, which you expect, right? Insulin shot up to 73.8. Okay, that's a lot. After an hour, the glucose started to go down. At 2 hours, the insulin level was almost 90. So that's really high. At 3.5 hours, the test had to be stopped because she was getting so hypoglycemic. They had to give her something so that she wouldn't get a hypoglycemic seizure. Okay, somebody who's not on meds for diabetes has a hyperinsulinemic response after being on aspartame for way too long. So the short of it is it causes excessive insulin response to sugar, which in turn makes you really hungry.
I would also think that her blood glucose at 230 at an hour is pretty damn high too. At an hour, if I heard you correctly.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little sluggish for a young person, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you would expect something better, but I think she had already moved into a metabolic syndrome at that stage.
So aspartame's interaction with insulin is to make insulin less sensitive.
Yeah, it creates.
So the body creates more. The pancreas creates more.
So it creates insulin insensitivity and hyperinsulinemic responses to sugar, which then makes you eat more carbs, which then makes you snack more. And then you're basically never fasting. And then this is where type 2 diabetics in particular get in trouble because they never fast. Their A1C's through the roof. They get vascular disease. They get amputations. And it snowballs.
And just to confirm what you're saying here, I've read things for 40 years now confirming this, that aspartame does cause hunger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Big time. And actually, I don't have the article, but I read an article years ago. If like little kids running around at school at recess, if they drink a bunch of diet soda and go running around, they'll get admitted to the hospital pretty quick for ketosis, for like a type of diabetes, for like a ketoacidosis, but without the diabetes. And they could end up with, apnea, like just stopping breathing. A few other things before we kind of segue into, the general discussion and the wrap up. We got brain cancer here. Brain cancer, folks. Did he just say brain cancer? Yes, I said brain cancer.
Okay. Always a good thing.
Yeah.
Sarcasm.
The product's about to fall down here. Oh, baby, we've got that. Put this thing back up here. So, actually, I knocked this thing down. We might as well talk about it.
We would like to be sponsored, please.
Yeah, Zevia, please sponsor us, Zevia.
I'm actually a huge fan of this.
So
making it for you.
But no, really, I recommend my patients drink this, and actually it helps to get them off of diet soda. They enjoy it. And
can I have the grape one?
Yeah, sure, man. Yeah.
It's good.
But we'll talk about erythritol.
That is the best one. Sorry.
Orange?
No, grape.
Oh, grape.
Grape's the best one. I've tried them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this gum, folks, if anybody insists on chewing gum, okay, this gum, it's called Pure Gum, P-U-R, and the U has 2 dots over it. Again, this one happens to be available on Amazon, but I think you can order off the website directly. But it's sweetened only with xylitol, okay? So,
which will be part of our series.
And that's going to be briefly discussed in this podcast, but that's why this is episode 1 of Diet Zero Light. This is only episode 1 because we're laying the framework here, guys. Okay, go ahead.
Since you opened this up, a few things. So xylitol is very deadly to dogs. Everybody be aware of that.
Yeah. Xylitol is dangerous for a lot of animals, especially dogs. Correct.
And Dr. Joe, so I'm going to ask you specifically about me, so you're not giving medical advice to the audience.
Yeah. Talking.
So would you say, as a physician, soda in general is probably not good for you because of the carbonation? I read a lot of information on that. It's not good for you. But I think what you're saying is if you're trying to get off of aspartame products and you're addicted to soda, this is the way to go, right? It's a step to getting off of it.
Yeah, and especially I don't have a caffeinated one here, but they have caffeinated ones of this. This company ripped off just about everything. Like they have a cola, they have a Dr. Zevia, they have a
soda.
And they have done a great job. Their Mountain Dew one, I gotta say, it doesn't taste like Mountain Dew. It just, sorry, it doesn't. But
All short, huh?
There goes the sponsorship.
Well, but I'm being honest. I'm being honest. I mean, and if they value some feedback, I mean, I think the grape soda is great. Most of my patients love the cream soda. So the cream soda, I think, is probably one of the more favorite ones.
That one's good
among my patients. And actually, I let their Coca-Cola go flat in my car and sit in the heat, and it tasted like old flat regular Coke. I mean, so their Coca-Cola.
Interesting.
That's the hack. That's the hack.
So, so the problem, though, unfortunately, is if you go to, say, a movie theater and you want to get your popcorn and soda, you're stuck with diet or you're stuck with sugared cola, which isn't good for you either.
I may ask you.
Ziva needs to have some acceptance, so you have that as an option.
Well, I mean, this fits in a purse.
Sure.
This fits in my pocket.
Yeah, this is true.
AMC.
I mean, like my friends and I, every time we went into movie theaters, we always brought our own snacks, and we always got away with it. The movie theaters always allowed us to bring in like whatever we want.
There you go, kids.
So, you know, I don't see that as an issue at all.
Well, here in California, literally, we used to do this as well, my wife and I, and they now search her purse. I don't know if that's true of every theater, but here in California, they search your purse.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, California.
That's California for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even sure if California is part of the United States anymore, but that's another podcast. But regarding the brain tumors, okay, so this is a great little article. It was published 1996. Okay, and we're gonna pop a figure from this, and all these articles we're talking about, folks. This is all free to access articles. Like these are all articles that you can find on the internet. So the short of it is here, and Chris, so you can kind of see this. There was a stark increase at about 1984. Is that transition from the lower box to the higher box, where there was an abrupt jump where the sort of average tumors per million went from about 48 to about just over 53. You know, are there any other studies after this that looked at this? No, but again, 1981 was when aspartame was approved for dry things, and then 1984 is when aspartame was approved for drinks. That's where you see the big jump. Okay, so it's an interesting little paper there.
Little parallel there.
Tumor suppressing cells, aspartame effects.
Yeah, I mean, if you cause necrosis in a part of your body, if you're causing apoptosis, or in the UK, apoptosis, okay, you're going to cause more potential to cause a cancer because you're causing all this inflammation and all these inflammatory mediators to, well, actually, no, if you're not inducing apoptosis is good. That's like the controlled demolition of your cells. Necrosis is what aspartame causes. Aspartame causes necrosis. Sorry. Which is just where the cell just falls apart and dies, and there's no programmed cell death. It's not programmed. It's not like we're gonna recycle you.
So you're confusing the signaling.
Yeah. Now, one more thing I'm gonna talk about is Gulf War syndrome. Gulf War syndrome, folks, is because of aspartame. Sorry, it is. Unwin et al. 1999 conducted a cross-section epidemiologic survey of United Kingdom servicemen who served in the Persian Gulf area. Their findings did not support a unique Gulf War syndrome. Ismail et al. In the same year analyzed 3 UK military cohorts of men serving in the Gulf War and others who had not been actively deployed to it. They could not determine a unique syndrome. So it was only our troops who got it because they were being sent diet products, and the cookies that their families were sending to them were held from them, and the military instead gave them diet products. And then they were drinking basically the diet colas all day long, or some equivalent. The water was bad, and so they put the artificial sweetener tasty thing in there so that they wouldn't taste it. So that's all. And so then they all ended up with Gulf War syndrome. So Gulf War syndrome is aspartame, folks. There you have it. There is your bombshell. So this last little thing here in the book, this is our segue into other sweeteners. So sucralose was sort of newish when this book came out. It was still fairly new, but there was already some information on the sucralose toxicity.
So Splenda.
Yeah, so sucralose is Splenda. Mm-hmm. Anything with the word 0 on it usually has sucralose and acesulfame. So this is the sucralose molecule. It's basically, it's sort of a sucrose homolog, but there's a problem. It's got 3 chlorines on it. So guys, let me ask you, when is it ever a good idea to put halogens on hydrocarbons and then eat it?
Is that ever no idea? Dan, you have any idea?
I would guess
it's never a good idea. Okay. Now just look at the acesulfame molecule, Dan. Just take a look at that acesulfame molecule. Mm-hmm. Check it out.
Looks reactive.
Yeah, look at this. It's a 6-membered ring. There's a nitrogen in there, and then there's
2 double bonds.
There's a sulfur with some oxygens, and then it's charged, and that just doesn't. And by the way, all of these molecules, aspartame, sucralose, and acesulfame, completely synthetic. They're not occurring in nature. So what I'm saying is, regardless of what you believe about your genome, folks, whether you believe your genome is 6,000 years old and the world was made in 7 days, or whether you think our genome is 2.4 million years old, give or take.
So these
molecules have been around for a fraction of that time.
This last molecule you just showed us, what is it?
Acesulfame potassium. So this is another co-sweetener that is in the typical 0 drinks. Now there are some 0 drinks.
Can I see the sucralose?
Yeah, sucralose. Yeah, so it's a disaccharide.
So the issue with this one's the chloride.
Yeah, so
the issue with that one's are the double bonds on the.
Well, it's just some weird molecule that just doesn't make any sense. It's like, well, what is this, and how is it safe? Because we're going to talk about how it's not safe in a minute. But this is a disaccharide. So monosaccharides, folks. So do you remember the monosaccharides? Anybody? Monosaccharides: glucose, fructose, galactose. Okay. And then there's trehalose. That's if you eat bugs. I don't like to eat bugs, so I'm not going to talk about that one.
But you may soon, according to the WEF. But go ahead. Sorry. That's right in the sidetrack.
So maltose is where you take 2 glucoses and they're together as a disaccharide. That's maltose. Then there's sucrose, which is a fructose and a glucose. Then there's lactose, which is galactose and glucose. Okay. So those are the typical sugars that we deal with. And then there's starch. Bread is it's like a polyglucose, and potatoes are a polyglucose, and there's polyglucoses called starches in a lot of foods we eat, right? So anyway, so sucrose has been halogenated. Now we didn't print out all the sucrose studies, but we did print out a few here. So this is a research highlights article. So Lucy Bird, thank you so much for sending me this article. So Lucy Bird is the author of this article. So thank you, Lucy.
We could get her on the podcast.
So now she sort of summarized the original article, which is the dietary sweetener sucralose is a negative modulator of T-cell mediated responses. So basically, all the drinks that say 0, certain protein drinks, right? Not gonna use names, have this stuff in it. So the target is CD8 cells. Okay, so whenever your doctor checks the CBC and you get your white count is made up of a whole bunch of different white cells. There's neutrophils, lymphocytes, monocytes, eosinophils, basophils, all kinds of cells. So, but those are the main 5. The one I'm talking about are lymphocytes. And so a percentage of your lymphocytes are CD8 cells. CD8 refers to their function, their receptors, and how they feed into the immune system. So bottom line is sucralose inhibits CD8 cells. It inhibits their migration and their proliferation. Proliferation means how they multiply, which leads to, number one, increased tumor growth in sucralose-treated mice. So there you go, folks. Sucralose grows tumors in mice.
So can you explain that, elaborate on that a little bit, doctor? I mean, cancer is an uncontrolled growth of cells.
Yes, it is.
And sucralose prohibits cell growth. So that's kind of a contradiction. So how does that work?
No, so it's not a contradiction, okay? Cancer is known to be an immune system problem because this is, to be an expert in cancer, I would have done a fellowship and I didn't do a fellowship, but this is what you need to know. When your immune system fails and when you get enough genetic damage and there's kind of the perfect storm going on, cells that should not be proliferating, that other cells should have come and killed, okay? Those cells are allowed to proliferate and they turn into tumors. And CD8 cells are part of your anti-tumor system. And so sucralose inhibits the functions of CD8 cells.
Okay, so the cells that are responsible for taking care of cancerous cells are not there.
Yeah, it's part of how you kill cancer cells before they become a problem. And so they demonstrated this in vivo in mice, okay? And this paper goes into more detail, but this is kind of the summary.
It's like the checkpoint inhibitors, and that's what that whole immunotherapy is about.
And then in terms of infection, likewise, CD8 cells, your CD8 cells are important for controlling Listeria infection. So Listeria is kind of like from cheese that's too soft and from deli meats and things, and it happens to immunocompromised people. Well, the short of it is sucralose makes you immunocompromised. I've lost count of how many patients I see who consume anywhere from 2 to 7 sources of sucralose a day, and they come in with recurrent infections.
More like to UTIs.
More to come.
What's the main one? Splenda, we talked. What's the other sucralose?
Sucralose. Asulfame is usually an additive. I don't know if Asulfame is its standalone product, but I believe Splenda is sucralose.
Because most people consume sucralose due to too much Splenda, right?
Yeah. Or they drink drinks that have the word zero in them.
Oh, Coke Zero. Okay, gotcha.
So just to finish up the discussion of sucralose, and folks, how we doing on time?
Stay tuned for part 2.
We're hitting the 1 hour mark.
So we're right at the 1 hour mark. So folks, the short of it is there's so much more to talk about here. We're going to be sharing a lot of links down below after this is all done. So we're going to be
link a dump.
So we're going to be sharing a lot of the articles that we talked about here, plus a bunch that we're not going to touch on very much, but sucralose in particular. So I found a study. Sucralose, like xylitol, like Asulfame, it decreases dental caries. So there's good things about sucralose. It actually helps your teeth to stay clean. But the deleterious effects on your body, it's not worth it, okay?
Similar to drinking fluoride, sounds like.
Yeah. Now, there's another study here. Sucralose not only shuts down bifidobacteria and lactobacillus, the two most important protective...
Dr. Hazen.
This is a salute to Dr. Hazen.
Shout out to Life Boost Coffee, affiliate link below, bifidobacteria.
Yeah, Life Boost and Dr. Hazen. If you cook sucralose, you can actually create toxic compounds in your oven.
Really? Yeah. Who would cook sucralose though?
Well, I mean, it's in a bake
for fun. Right?
Like say they use it as an additive and they put it in the oven and they bake with it. Well, then they open the oven and then they inhale some toxic substance.
Yeah, because you're getting chloride or
I mean, again, you're cooking a halogenated carbon at 200, 300, 400 degrees. Anyway,
who would have thought? That's a terrible idea.
There's another study, sucralose gut dysbiosis and insulin resistance. Wow. Now this is hilarious. Cleveland Clinic, okay? I'm not saying anything about them. I'm just quoting. Wow. We're going to share this link with you. So health.clevelandclinic.org/is-sucralose-splenda-bad-4-u. Okay, so people,
bad is the
so people can go and look this up, and you read this article. This registered dietitian knows how to write and how to get the job done. and sort of make you read between the lines. Basically, they said occasionally and in moderation. So what does that mean? They basically said you shouldn't drink it every day. How many people drink it every day? Anyway.
Well, you'd have to define occasionally and in moderation. Once a day might be okay, according to occasion. I mean, it depends on how you're defining those terms.
And
Dr. Joe doesn't think so.
So we're going back.
No, I know he doesn't think so, but I'm just saying it's dependent upon definitions.
Well, only the most committed win. And when it comes to your health, I want people to be committed.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree.
So some professionals published a study that includes sucralose non-carcinogenicity in the title. It says sucralose non-carcinogenicity in the title, and we're going to share this. You can find the PDF for free. A lot of these other articles are behind paywalls, but you can click this and open it for free. Then you go into the financial disclosure in the free PDF, and it was a nutritional company who funded the study, and a quick search on that company shows that that company is one of the biggest producers of sucralose in the world.
Very nice. There's no conflict of interest there.
No, not at all. No.
Stay tuned to the science versus scientism.
Please, I got 2 questions, so please save time for the 2 questions.
Yeah, for sure. And folks, the last few set of links are going to be about erythritol, which is from stevia. Okay, so just so that people understand.
Wait, stevia bad, right?
No, stevia is good.
Stevia good?
Yeah, stevia is okay.
Okay.
I mean, it's better than these ones.
Okay.
So look at this, folks. Glycerol
It's natural.
is a natural thing. It's part of your metabolism. It's 3 carbons and OHs. So you need glycerol for a lot of processes in your body.
See, that stuck with the double bond O just looks bad.
Erythritol is like glycerol, but it's got 4 carbons. Otherwise, it has the same pattern. Xylitol, it has 5 carbons. Okay, so there's no halogens. There's no weird sulfurs. There's no weird, and both of these are naturally occurring.
Anyway. Quick sidebar. So what I've noticed now, I've done the estrogen one with you, coenzyme Q10.
Yep.
And now this, I'm noticing a pattern. Is it true? Like most double bonds, especially double bond O, right? Like saturated fats are the ones that are good for you. The unsaturated fats have double bonds.
Okay.
I'm noticing a theme between double bond being highly reactive and generally being bad for you. That because of oxidative stress.
Are you talking about the cis versus trans conformation of the hydrocarbon part? Or are you talking about oxygen?
Like a double bonded oxygen generally bad in the body versus OH?
Well, no, because CoQ10.
CoQ10 is the only one.
See, CoQ10 has the quinone group on it.
Yeah.
But it's all about the context of the molecule. If there's electron donators that are too close to make it more reactive. And it also just depends on where the molecule is made to fit into your body.
I see. Okay.
So it's
all right.
But so that rule doesn't always apply to everything. Okay. But that's a good question. Lastly, folks, there's a list of things about erythritol. Okay. In short, stevia promotes a healthy microbiome compared to the other artificial sweeteners. It promotes bifidobacterium. So I found this obscure article. They actually found that bifidobacterium, but I couldn't find the whole thing. I can only find the abstract, but I thought it was interesting.
Hazen's favorite.
But I did catch it. I got to call her out.
Yeah.
I caught her drinking Coke Zero in the office many a time.
She said she was addicted to Diet Coke herself.
Well, that was before she got famous.
Well,
maybe
Dr.
she got
Hazen,
off that.
We're gonna have to do something about that, Dr. Hazen. Don't you worry. We will get you squared away. Anyway, so this article, erythritol sweetened beverage induces satiety and suppresses ghrelin. So do you guys remember what ghrelin is?
Appetite?
I don't.
Yeah, so ghrelin is growl. I'm hungry, I want to eat. So
leptin suppresses
this drink suppresses appetite. Whereas aspartame cause you to eat more and get
me
more.
And Dora got cases of this. We do want you back. I love the Mountain Dew flavor. Let's get sponsored.
So folks, in short, folks, if you're gonna drink a soda, if you insist on drinking a sweet soda, Zevia is the thing that you need to drink. The science beyond proves this, and the clinical experience, which none of the aspartame companies can ever take away from me or any other doctor who sees this and notices it. It can't be denied. So, folks, I think that just about wraps it up. Chris, any questions that you wanted to ask?
So I have two.
Yes.
So going back to the CD8 and you're needing this to fight cancer.
Yes.
So you made a statement before that. It was in regards to necrosis.
Yeah, I mixed it up initially. Yes. Yeah.
So you made a statement about necrosis. It's not an error that I noticed, but it's just a curiosity question. Yeah. So you're stating if you drink, and I don't know what compound or chemical you're referring to. I think aspartame, it might have been saccharin. I don't remember which. Causes necrosis of the cells, right? Mm-hmm. Could this be used in some way to fight cancer, though? Right. So you're killing cells, right? That's what you want to do with cancer.
I think it would be a better use of aspartame to just inject it into tumors,
or just repurpose it into a prodrug.
Yeah, or maybe I would.
That's our new biotech.
You know, yeah, maybe the thing to do with aspartame is, you know how interventional radiologists do a TACE, transarterial chemoembolization, like so it's like a targeted bombing, like they put the catheter there and they squirt this stuff into the vascular structure of the tumor and they starve the tumor. So maybe I would say for non-vascular tumors, because aspartame is so terrible for you. I would do it for the non-vascularized tumors or the less vascular ones. I would just inject them with aspartame.
Maybe you're onto something, Chris. Prodrug aspartame.
Well, I mean, it's killing the cells, and that's what you want.
Enough. I would
fighting cancer. Okay, interesting. Right. So maybe you could do a little research on that. But my other question was saccharin. Are we going to discuss saccharin in this series? Because saccharin. That was the first. And I know that.
So the short of saccharin is there was like 1 or 2 studies on mice or something, or some animal, some like small animal, and it induced tumors and it got all this bad press. But in reality, the industry just traded one toxic substance for 3 or 4 other ones.
Yeah. It was the original artificial sweetener, though, I believe, right?
It was. Not a lot of people use it. I think the psychology.
Any longer. Right.
The psychology that was created by the industry was enough to make it not used very much. Okay. But again, it's synthetic as far as I know, and I would say the precautionary principle, based on your valuable and delicate genome that should be cherished, you should not put artificial chemicals into your body if you can avoid it.
Okay.
So, not just we haven't even discussed the epigenetics effect of aspartame. You don't need to. It's so.
It's so mutagenic. It's so destructive to your body. I mean, kind of the same way that like smoking and alcohol, causes alterations in methylation and ethylation to your DNA. I'm sure aspartame addiction
does it too.
I'm sure it's going to do the same thing to some degree. Except that's if a baby is going to survive that attack, because I mean, aspartame kills babies in the womb. So
wow.
Yeah.
You can point to all the wrongs with aspartame. Yeah. It's like speeding.
So I have a third question. Sorry, I lied.
Okay, third question, Chris. Third question from Chris.
Okay. So I've developed a habit of drinking. You can't really see it, but it's Kool-Aid. Kool-Aid. It's reduced sugar by 70%, so it doesn't have a lot of sugar, but it has some. So, real sugar versus artificial sweetener, which is preferred?
Real sugar.
Well, I asked him this yesterday.
Well, you know what, guys? If I'm gonna pick a sugar that my body can do something with versus a toxic chemical like aspartame, I'm gonna choose the sugar, obviously. But with certain products, I'm not talking about any particular one. I'm just saying certain products. Okay.
Sure.
We already had our estrogen talk last time, right, Dan?
Yep.
Red 40,
Chris, man.
Red 1.
You gotta watch episode 2.
So not only is our food colorings estrogenic,
you're in severe violation.
But they cause ADHD.
Well, Dan, beware.
So folks, don't forget about our first 2 podcasts. Okay, if you're hypertensive, you better be on CoQ10. If you have hormonal problems, you need to read Anthony J's book and probably watch the podcast. So
Estrogeneration.
Yeah,
that was a fun
Estrogeneration by Anthony J. That's another plug for that book that people need to read.
Yep.
But anyway, folks, that just about wraps up episode 1 of Diet Zero Light. Thank you.
Well, thank you for watching.
Cool. Cut.
Hey,